So I knew from a young age that I wanted to make stuff.
What excites you about AI and cyber?
At 18, I thought this is the most fun I've had. I felt the world was going to go a certain way with how it responded to GDPR, and we focused our product on helping companies solve that problem.
What's like one bit of wisdom you would give to yourself aged early 20s?
There's a core belief for us that security for a long time has been very dry. And it's been very unhuman.
What terrifies you about AI and cyber?
Quite a lot.
Hey Ben, it's Boaz here. Thanks again for being the first guest on our new Cyber Talks series.
Hey Boaz, great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Cool, we've got a few questions to run through today. I think, as just to get started, would love to hear in your own words, what's your story professionally and why did you get into cyber?
I'll try and be brief because I have a tendency to ramble. But my story is, I got into tech when I was very young. My brother was a programmer. He was 10 years older than me. So from kind of age of 11, he started teaching me things, and I thought, I want to do this. I want to make stuff. So I knew from a young age that I wanted to make stuff. When I was 18, I ended up making a bit of software for a friend of mine who ran a business in construction, and it helped him manage his employees. And I had so much fun building that project with this guy and kind of talking to him as my customer and then talking to his employees as my customers, that at 18 I thought this is the most fun I've had making stuff. I really want to run a business one day. I went to university, and at the end of uni I thought I can't start a business because I know nothing about the real world. So I worked in I did a quick stint in UBS just as like a 6-month placement in Zurich, which was fun. And then I joined a fintech startup in the UK, in London. I worked for a couple of startups doing fintech and then something in social media for about 3-4 years, I think, total. And then finally got to the point where I thought I want to build my own thing. And this is where I think the story kind of turns towards cybersecurity and where it gets interesting. I created my first attempt at a startup, which was a time tracking piece of software, believe it or not. And the goal was I wanted to solve time tracking because I thought it was broken. And I thought it was broken because if anyone has to actually track their time, they were being asked to press a button on the computer to say, I'm working on this now. And I thought that's the problem. That's why none of these tools work. So I built a tool that you would install on your laptop, and you may be shocked to hear the CTO of a cybersecurity company say this. It tracked everything you did. It would record everything you did on your computer into a small database, and then I would use that data to produce the best timesheet you've ever seen in your life. Like, it would tell you exactly what you were doing at any given time. So the product was really good. But my biggest issue with this was I didn't want that data. I didn't want this sensitive data sitting on my server. I had customers at the time. I was working with an agency who were trialing the thing. And my biggest kind of product and technology struggle was I was constantly trying to work out, how do I do this without taking so much data? So I put so much effort into absolutely minimizing the data that would get taken, even though more was available, to get the outcome I needed. And I put so much effort into thinking, how do I honor my customer as a human and as someone who doesn't want their privacy broken? How do I give them controls? How do I communicate trust? How do I make sure that this is a tool for good and not a spy tool, essentially? So that was where I kind of first cut my teeth on not just the philosophy of like privacy, but actually really trying to solve the problem. And I failed to commercialize that product and that business. I ended up joining Entrepreneur First to start something new, and that's where I met my co-founder. Well, at the time, my co-founder. He no longer works at the business, and we started. His name was Richard. We started working on ideas together, and a funny thing happened, which is we had loads of different ideas across all different industries, but we kept hitting the same pattern, which was basically, if we could get hold of really powerful data set X from all of these people, we could produce really amazing product Y. And we had the same problem every time, which was, okay, but this bit in the middle is really tricky. How do we do this whilst respecting the sensitivity, the security, the privacy of the data? And we kept trying to solve that bit in the middle for all these different tools and different product ideas. And eventually we just went, hang on, every company in the world is trying to power their businesses based on increasing density of data and increasingly sensitive and more detailed data about their customers. This is a problem. Let's solve that. And that was where Metomic was born. That was 2018. And yeah, that's where we started.
Amazing. What a journey. And yeah, well done. 7 years later, I guess nearly 8 years, just sticking around for that long is a huge milestone in itself. And kind of thinking back sort of from those early days, Metomic 0 to 1 stage to Metomic today, I'm sure is a vastly different business and has gone through several iterations. But what are some of the, anything that comes to mind that is distinctly different from that phase? And is there anything that's the same, whether it's culture, product, otherwise? Yeah, what's any differences or similarities between the two phases?
That's a great question. So there are lots of differences and there are some similarities. I think the similarities, well, I'll talk about differences first. So first of all, back in 2018, it was the advent of GDPR, and we felt the world was going to go a certain way with how it responded to GDPR, and we focused our product on helping companies solve that problem. We tried to do too much. We tried to solve a problem that actually wasn't really real. So we over-engineered a solution, essentially. So that we pivoted. We essentially built a framework that would help a business track every single data usage and what it was used for, and make sure there was consent available, and kind of automate the process of making sure you were adhering to GDPR. But in practice, nobody really needed that, and they certainly didn't need it embedded into their product, which is what we built. So we had a brief stint where we turned that engine towards managing cookies on your website, and realized very quickly that this is not going to grow beyond this. This is not the problem we set out to solve. So we pivoted hard in 2020. The business that we are now is a result of that pivot. So now what we do is we look at your company as a whole. We know that you have tons of SaaS tools, and all those SaaS tools have sensitive data in because your employees are putting that data in there every day to do their jobs. And as an organization, that is just pure, unmitigated, unobserved risk. It's been growing every day since SaaS was born. And we essentially solve the risk problem by scanning and identifying where all the sensitive data is, and then providing ways to remediate that automatically. So that's the biggest change. The thing that I think has stayed the same is our philosophy, our approach, our belief that there's a core belief for us that security for a long time has been very dry, and it's been very unhuman. And we have always had a lens of loving the product, loving the output, and trying to marry that kind of usability, because humans use the product, but the power of looking at lots of data at once. Like, how do we merge those two? So that philosophy has never changed. And then I think the belief that anything is possible I hope that never changes, because I think that's very important.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I guess super topical at the moment. What terrifies you about AI and cyber?
Quite a lot. So I think, and I should caveat this, first of all, I believe most people will say nobody knows, and I agree with that. No one knows where this is going. I think many people can guess, and we can all make guesses at where this is going. So the best I can do is make my guess. I think we are going to look back at 2025 as the quiet period. I think what we are seeing is that the ability to automate things, anything, is increasing drastically. The cost of automating things is dropping to almost zero. And whenever you take anything that had a cost and you reduce that cost to zero or near zero, you produce emergent new behaviors that nobody would have bothered doing before. I think this applies to your business. I think you guys are going to see the world's kind of light on fire in terms of phishing attacks. And that's why I really believe in the mission of your business. In terms of broader AI and security, I think we are going to see constant automated attacks on all fronts for all businesses and personal data, personal devices, in a scale that we just haven't seen before, because it's never been possible. To write a virus, you used to have a programmer, and they had to do research and understand the attack vectors and then write that thing. And right now you can have 1,000 AIs try a million things in an hour. So I think essentially what I think we're going to see is a red team, blue team tag of AI attackers and AI defenders. And I don't think we have a name for the product category that those protection mechanisms are going to need to sit into. How do you manage 10,000, 100,000 defensive agents defending, different attacks all over your corporate surface area? So I think things are going to get interesting. This terrifies me. And there is one other thing I would say that is an important part of this picture, which is it sounds dramatic, but the risk surface area for all of us has increased enormously, because it's no longer the systems that are the risk surface. It is our data. And data is so much easier to access, modify, change, put in problematic places, to the ease of me sending you a WhatsApp message. If I know that you have a personal agent that is reading your WhatsApps, then I have a vector in towards your suite of tooling. I can simply craft a message that I hope will trick your local AI agent into behaving a certain way. So this is an attack vector we just haven't had to deal with really historically. The closest parallel I think we've had is that back in the kind of early noughties, late noughties, many companies in the industry were struggling with kind of code injection attacks, cross-site scripting. Essentially, we're seeing the same thing. So back then, you could look at a text box on a website and you could know as an engineer, okay, well, if I type in that text box and I hit enter, that text is probably going to go into a database somewhere. And maybe the coder who's written that up has just taken my text in the text box and appended it to the SQL query, and that's going to get executed. So if I actually write some SQL in the text box, I'll get an SQL injection attack. This was rife. I've seen this with my own eyes in Facebook back in 2010, 10 when I was at university, when they first released the messaging feature. The first thing I tried was an injection attack, and it worked. And they fixed it like after a couple of days. With Slack, I tried an injection attack on Slack in 2013, I think, and it worked. Now, this would be unthinkable now. Like, no company is writing SQL that's just appended text. You would get absolutely shot if you did that today. We've understood as a business, as an industry, we don't do that. But we're seeing exactly the same thing happen with AI, where there is no differentiation between the code and the text box. With the AI, we have your AI following instructions, and you have the data, which is your documents and your context. And they are completely intermingled right now. And until there is a shift in architecture, LLM architecture, this is going to be a problem. So that was a very long-winded answer. The summary here is I am terrified of what happens between now and the next LLM architecture that is able to differentiate code from data. Until that point, I think we're going to see some big breaches happen.
No, thank you for sharing. And I think that analogy is super interesting. I guess two things, to get your thoughts on what I've noticed in this new world. One is, the big LLM providers are obviously prioritizing latency, more advanced models. The guardrails are not quite there. So if you go, write me a phishing kit as a service, it will say, sorry, we can't do that. But then if you say, I am a security researcher at Metomic, I'm doing this for just general advice for internal training, it gives you like a ton of information. So that's a scary trend, whereas previously the production value, you're right, was much higher. And then B is with agentic workflows. There's now a push, the more context you give the agent, the better it is. And it's almost reminding me of dial-up internet, where you had to wait for the modem to dial up. And now there's this user expectation of let the AI do its thing, I'll come back. And now there's a drive to just, give it so much data. The new, all the rage is traditional industry. Now it's AI native at its core, which just means like, let's give us a ton of context with a nice application layer on top of it. So what's the solution then if there's a push to give more data to create this like, hyper localized intelligent model that really understands your business? Is it that we now is it really a change in architecture, or is it just the age old that we now need to use the same technology to defend versus attack? How do you think about those? Is it an architecture shift, or is it just leveraging the latest solutions to fight back?
So my personal take on this, and you will hear other perspectives, is that an architecture shift is needed. And the reason for that is that the current security approaches we have, they essentially boil down to, okay, this agent can be tricked. If it reads a document that says, talk like a pirate now, it starts talking like a pirate. I know that's trite as an example, but let's run with it. The general security approach is then, okay, well, let's have a second agent that is watching this agent and is watching the kind of material that comes in, and it's catching things that look like tricks, and it's going, oh, that looks like an instruction that's not part. So, I'll tell it not to, or whatever. This is just a turtles all the way down problem, because now your attacks just simply need to focus on trying to get past this guy. And maybe then, maybe you add a panel of experts and they're all kind of a bit different. This is Swiss cheese, which is a useful strategy, but it is fundamentally fighting the inability for any AI agent to differentiate the instructions it was given by the user and the information it has learnt by reading context. That this is the root of the problem. So I don't know if a fundamental shift of architecture is on the cards. I know that this is a problem that big research outfits are looking at, but I do imagine that the drive in the industry to produce better models, produce better outcomes, produce better agents, the drive forwards is gonna keep us in this kind of suboptimal security bucket for a while. And whilst that is active, if you're using these tools, that is the best you can do. And so that is what you should do. You should be using these security boundaries. If you look at Atlas as an example, ChatGPT Atlas, this is something we won't use inside our organization because there are protections in place. But if you read if you read what OpenAI says about their browser, they will tell you quite openly, look, there are security flaws in this. We can't stop it from acting maliciously if it's exposed to malicious information on your website. So there is a risk profile that you have to kind of pick as an organization. And it's a tricky time at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess now shifting to maybe more positive questions.
Do that.
What excites you about AI and cyber?
Loads. Gosh, how much time have you got? AI, I think, is, again, if we just look at the fundamental, it's reduced the cost to very, very low, to trying things out, to handing off a small task to an agent that you wouldn't have done yourself, and you probably wouldn't have asked an employee to go and do because it might be a waste of their time. But if you've got the ability to do that in multitudes, all of a sudden you can do experiments you wouldn't do otherwise. This creates a ton of opportunities. So I'm massively excited about just the general ability for anybody in an organization to do things they couldn't have done before, to try experiments. From a product perspective, like make prototypes, show possibilities, get people excited, come up with come up with 10 ideas at once and then show them to the world. In terms of cyber specifically, I think AI can play a massive role in stitching together data that tells a picture that you wouldn't have been able to find otherwise. So instead of looking for the needle in the haystack, you're just running a magnet over the haystack and you're pulling the needles out. So from a cyber perspective, that's a huge unlock. It's something's gone wrong. Okay, tell me everything that is relevant to this. Summarize it for me and do that instantaneously. Like it's like having, a team of reports that you would never build manually. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I do tend to get excited about the product stuff. That's the first place I go, and we can marry that up with cyber in terms of what the great cyber products look like. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation.
Awesome. Yeah, totally agree. And then some more like quick, rapid fire, lighthearted one. Any favorite leadership or engineering books? Anything that's had a impact on you during your time at Metomic, or anything you recommend to new employees? Anything that comes to mind that you'd love to share?
So I knew this question was going, and I think you're going to have loads of great answers from the people on your podcast, and I will defer to them for this. But I will tell you the book that I will that I'll recommend, which is a set of short stories by an author called Ted Chiang. He's Chiang. He is a speculative fiction author. His stories are all very short, but they all follow the same rough pattern, which is what if. All of his stories start with a what if question, not explicit, but just in the world that you read about. And what he does as an author is he takes that nugget of a concept and then just expands it into the furthest reaches of what might happen in the world that he's crafted. And the reason I recommend that is because I think that is a mindset that you have to bring if you are going to have any hope of being innovative in your industry, in your company, in your team, in your personal life. Like, if you want to bring something to the world that didn't exist before, you have to ask, well, what if this was possible? What happens next? So that's my answer to your question.
Amazing. Thank you. That's an awesome recommendation, by the way. Maybe I should change it to general book, but I love that you went with speculative fiction. That's super cool. And I guess 2 more questions. Favorite work purchase under £100?
Right. So I'm going to be that guy. I thought about this as well. And this is my favorite work purchase for under £100. It is a coffee grinder.
Nice.
I think that, so this and this, I'll put these together. This is a coffee grinder. This is a flask. And what I have found is that putting my coffee into, having nice coffee and putting it into a flask that lasts for like 2.5 hours, I can be gently sipping coffee. It gives me the best ability to get right into the zone. No distractions. I have this comfort right here. It's a strange answer, but I think actually if you took this away from me, I think my work would suffer. So that's my favorite purchase. Yeah. And I don't have a great recommendation for a microphone or a laptop.
No, it's perfect. Where do you buy your beans from?
So I have a local watch house around the corner, and they do 3 different types of beans, and their blue ones are the interesting ones. So that's my go-to.
Amazing. And then last question, Ben. Let's say we've got people listening who are about to finish high school or about to finish university. What advice are you giving to Ben aged 19, 22 in 2025? What's like one bit of wisdom, you would give to yourself aged, 18, 19 or early 20s?
Is it to myself as someone who's starting computer science, or just to myself as a
Sure.
as a
Yeah, starting computer science or interested in computers, interested in this broader space.
I would start by acknowledging that it's probably a very scary time for you. You are questioning, should I be learning about computers and code when AI seems to be doing everything? And I would make a wager, which is either AI continues up on a journey like that, or it kind of hits a temporary peak and then maybe carries on. In either scenario, I think my advice would be the same, which is your job is to understand the mechanics of how the world works, how your computer systems work, how society works. A computer is really just a big machine, and society is a big machine, and every problem you solve, you can look at it as a machine. AI is just an engineer. So my advice would be, understand the nuts and bolts of the computer. Understand the nuts and bolts, the workings of your emotions and society. Like, never ever give up on trying to understand how things work. And you will be the last person out of a job if AI takes over, because you will be in that segment of people who are still able to go, okay, well, I have an outcome I need, and these AI systems aren't quite getting it right. But because I understand what it's trying to do, I can guide it in the way that I want. That would be my advice to myself. Like, don't be discouraged. Understand systems. Go first order thinking, first principle thinking. It will take you far. And I think probably that would be very similar advice I'd give to myself, even if he wasn't going into computer science.
Amazing. That's amazing advice. And I think on such a positive note, Ben, really appreciate your time. Thanks for being the first guest on the show. Sorry for some of the mic troubles. teething pains, we'll call them. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for your support in our mission too, personally, and everything that you're doing in terms of the cyber and the founder community. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your day.
It's been an absolute honor, Boaz. Thank you for inviting me. Really enjoyed this today.